If success were purely a matter of raw intelligence, Mensa meetings would be held on private yachts,
Right,
right?
yeah, they absolutely would.
And, every gifted child would grow up to just effortlessly run the world. But we all know that is definitely not the reality we live in.
No, not even close.
Because we see ordinary people doing extraordinary things all the time. And then on the flip side, we see incredibly brilliant, talented people who somehow just they stay stuck in neutral.
Oh, constantly, yeah.
So what exactly do the people at the top have that the rest of us don't? Today, we are taking a deep dive into the source material of a really fascinating text called The Psychology of Success.
It's such a great source.
It really is. And our mission today for you listening right now is to kind of strip away the comfortable myths we like to tell ourselves and look at the actual underlying mechanics of achievement.
Yeah, and to set the baseline for this deep dive, we have to completely reframe how we look at the timeline of success.
Okay, what do you mean by the timeline?
Well, we put so much emphasis on the launch, right? The grand idea, the ribbon cutting, the big New Year's resolution.
The day you buy the domain name.
Exactly, the domain
Yeah.
name purchase.
Right.
But the psychology of achievement is almost entirely about what happens when that initial excitement inevitably evaporates. Success is just not determined at the starting line.
Which I love because the text uses this marathon analogy here, and it perfectly illustrates that whole starting line illusion.
It's a great visual.
Right. So imagine two people at the start of a marathon. They're both perfectly healthy. They both bought the expensive running shoe.
They got the fancy hydration packs.
Exactly. And they both have the exact same desire to win. The gun goes off, and they both feel completely unstoppable.
Right. Because at mile 1, the crowd is cheering and your adrenaline is just surging. But the text makes this really profound point.
Which is what?
The outcome of that race is decided when the cheering stops. It's decided at, like, mile 20, when the motivation completely vanishes,
Yeah.
your muscles are screaming, and absolutely nobody's watching you.
Man, mile 20 is brutal.
It is. And that exact moment of quiet isolation is where the psychological separation between the successful and the unsuccessful actually happens.
Which brings up a fascinating contradiction in how we talk about doing hard things, I think, because society treats motivation like it's the ultimate, premium fuel.
Oh, we're obsessed with it.
We really are. We're always trying to find our motivation. But reading through these sources, it struck me that relying on motivation is basically a massive vulnerability.
A huge vulnerability.
It's like a sugar rush. It feels amazing. It gives you this massive spike of energy to, reorganize your entire life at 2 a.m.
We've all been there.
But you always inevitably crash.
That's exactly what it is. And the underlying neurology actually explains why that crash is completely unavoidable.
Wait, really? There's a biological reason for the crash?
Oh, absolutely. Motivation is driven by dopamine spikes in the brain's reward center. And acting on it requires a heavy cognitive load from your prefrontal cortex.
Remind me, the prefrontal cortex is the...
It's the part of your brain responsible for complex planning, impulse control, decision-making.
Got it. Okay.
The problem is, that part of the brain is incredibly energy hungry. It gets fatigued by stress, by poor sleep, or just, by the sheer number of tiny decisions you have to make in a normal day.
So if I'm waiting to, quote unquote, feel motivated to write a chapter of my book or go to the gym,
Yeah.
I am essentially waiting for my prefrontal cortex to have surplus energy, which is almost never.
Precisely. You are handing the keys to your future over to random daily fluctuations in your blood sugar or your mood.
Wow. That's a terrible strategy.
It is. And what the text reveals is that successful people just don't rely on the prefrontal cortex to get things done.
What do they use instead?
They offload the behavior to the basal ganglia.
The basal ganglia.
Right. It's the part of the brain that handles automatic routines and habits. The basal ganglia requires almost zero conscious energy.
Oh, because it's on autopilot.
Exactly. When a behavior becomes a true habit, you don't need a dopamine spike to execute it. You just do it, like tying your shoes.
Okay, wait. If that's true, doesn't that mean the entire cultural narrative of, finding your passion or waiting for inspiration is actually a giant trap?
It is absolutely a trap.
Are we just giving ourselves a biologically built-in excuse not to act when we don't feel that dopamine hit?
Yes, 100%. The modern narrative implies that action follows feeling, that you have to be inspired to create or motivated to work.
Right. I'm just not feeling it today.
Exactly. But the psychological reality is the exact reverse. Feeling follows action.
Feeling follows action.
Yeah. The people who consistently succeed aren't waking up wildly passionate on a random rainy Tuesday. They are simply the most consistent because they've built a system that functions totally, regardless of their emotional state.
So it's not about mood.
No, they have a rule that says, I write 500 words, or I make 10 sales calls, whether they feel like it or not.
Okay, so if we establish that offloading behaviors to the basal ganglia, building reliable systems is the only sustainable way forward, what throws a wrench in that machinery?
Well,
Because if habits are so automatic, why do we still abandon our goals all the time?
because the brain has an override switch,
Hmm.
and it's called the amygdala.
The fear center.
Exactly. When you step out of your comfort zone, you trigger a fear response. The text points straight to this. It's the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, and honestly, the fear of just looking foolish.
Looking stupid is a huge one.
Huge. These are the twin guardians at the gate of any worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah.
And they hijack the brain's systems before millions of people even take their first step.
Okay, here is where I really want to push back on the modern hustle culture. Because I think it does people a massive disservice.
How so?
Well, if you scroll online, everything screams at you to be fearless, right?
Yeah.
You see it on T-shirts and hashtags. It's this idea that if you're a true visionary, you just have ice in your veins.
Right, the fearless entrepreneur myth.
Yeah. But the source material argues the exact opposite. It says feeling fear isn't a sign of weakness at all. It's a biological requirement.
It is. It is biologically impossible to do something entirely new without activating the nervous system.
So everyone feels it.
Everyone. The assumption is that the person on stage, speaking to thousands of people, doesn't feel fear. But physiologically, their response is identical to the person who is terrified in the front row.
Really? Identical.
Yes, their heart rate goes up, their palms sweat, cortisol is released. The difference isn't the absence of that arousal, it's the cognitive interpretation of it.
Okay, explain that. How do they interpret it differently?
Unsuccessful people label that physiological spike as terror, and they use it as a signal to retreat. Successful people label the exact same biological spike as excitement, or simply, the necessary cost of admission.
Wow.
Courage isn't an absence of fear. Courage is taking the action while your hands are still shaking.
I love that. And I think that ties directly into why this fearless culture is actually dangerous. If you don't feel fear, you probably aren't stretching yourself.
Exactly, you're playing it too safe.
Which leads to how we process the inevitable result of taking those risks, which is failure. And the text makes a really hard line distinction here.
It does.
It says unsuccessful people see failure as an indictment of their identity. Like it's proof they should just quit. But successful people see failure as pure, objective feedback.
Right. And let's look at the mechanism of that feedback, because it's fascinating. In neuroscience, there's a concept called error-related negativity.
Error-related negativity, okay.
Yeah. When you make a mistake, your brain produces a sharp electrical signal. It feels incredibly uncomfortable. We hate it.
It's that sinking feeling in your stomach.
Exactly. But that specific uncomfortable signal is the only way your brain updates its predictive models. It's neuroplasticity in action.
So without it, nothing changes.
Right. If you don't fail, you don't generate that error signal, which means your brain physically cannot learn the new boundaries of the environment.
It's like trying to learn how to ride a bike without gravity.
Oh, that's a perfect way to put it.
You literally cannot find your balance until you feel yourself falling. You need the ground to tell you that you leaned way too far left.
Exactly.
So if failure is the literal biological mechanism for growth, aren't the people engineering perfectly safe, fearless lives actually guaranteeing that they stay completely stagnant?
They are guaranteeing cognitive and professional stagnation, yes.
That is wild.
If your primary goal is to avoid the discomfort of that error signal, you will avoid anything challenging. But when you reframe failure as data, when you view a setback not as a personal flaw, but as a structural weakness in your approach that has just been illuminated, everything changes.
But man, embracing that error signal, falling off the bike over and over, and pushing through the amygdala's fear response, that takes a staggering amount of time.
It really does.
You don't update those neural models overnight. You have to endure a lot of public stumbling before you get to the finish line.
Which introduces the greatest filter of all, delayed gratification.
The long game.
Yes. Surviving the messy middle requires playing the long game. And psychologically, this is where the vast majority of people just tap out.
Because it's so hard to wait.
Right. It's the classic choice of a small, guaranteed reward today versus a massive theoretical reward years from now.
And it is so incredibly hard in practice. I mean, we know we should save for retirement. We know we should learn the complex software instead of watching another video, but the brain just screams for the immediate payoff.
Because of an evolutionary mismatch.
How so?
Well, for hundreds of thousands of years, our brains were wired to prioritize immediate survival. If you found calories, you consume them immediately because they might be gone tomorrow.
Right, there were no refrigerators.
Exactly. We are biologically primed for something called hyperbolic discounting,
Hyperbolic discounting, meaning what?
meaning we severely undervalue rewards that are far away in time. But the text makes it clear. The mathematics of modern success require time to compound.
You have to let it build.
Whether you are building a business, mastering a craft, or investing, you have to fight your own evolutionary wiring to choose tomorrow over today.
And this is where the text introduces a concept that completely changed how I view this struggle. It's the invisible power of your environment.
Yes, the environment is huge.
Usually when we talk about environment, we use metaphors like, a seed in toxic soil, which is fine, but it doesn't really explain how the soil affects you. I was reading this and thinking, the environment isn't just soil, it's a thermostat.
A thermostat. Oh, I like that. Unpack how that operates.
Well, if you set a room's thermostat to 70 degrees and you open a window to try and let in a draft of really cold air, the heating system is going to automatically kick on and fight you to bring the temperature back to 70.
Right, it compensates.
It's an invisible force maintaining the baseline. The text argues that your social circle, the books you read, and the content you consume online act exactly like that thermostat.
That makes perfect sense.
If you are surrounded by people who demand immediate gratification,